America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
On and on it goes. A seemingly never-ending series of nasty Twitter and FBI investigations. The world of sports, not a pretty place right now. We'll do our best to try and make some sense of it all this morning. There's a football game tonight, a good one. Baseball playoffs are next week, so hopefully some fun can find its way into the conversation this morning, big fella.
Hopefully we can. Hopefully we can get a fun way to give away some bobbleheads. I was thinking of a way, but probably won't work. It would have to do with the sad news and the underneath a lot of guys' mattresses when they were growing up are sad places right now. As Hugh Hefner passed away, and for those of you around our age, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
91 years old.
There you go.
R.I.P. Hef.
What a life, huh?
A really significant cultural figure.
Oh, my gosh.
In a variety of ways.
It is certainly for this age of from my son, whose actual birthday it is today, of 28, and Jake 26, Sydney 22. For this era, not really. It's certainly, Playboy magazine is nowhere near what it was, peaking with its circulation of 7 million in the 70s to about 800,000 just a couple of years ago. And I only know that because I read it. About that.
Yeah, Golic only
I
ever
read
got
Playboy
for the article.
For the articles, that's
Sure.
exactly right. But
I remember the jokes, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Believe it or not, they had funny jokes in that magazine.
They did. How about so Hugh Hefner, 91 years old. I was thinking of having some fun with that, but that can only get us into trouble somehow,
Speaking of getting into trouble, you realize that you've gotten me into trouble with this bobblehead thing. Can I tell you how?
Is it any more trouble than my wife and my kids are getting bombarded, and then me having to bring home 3 or 4 different bobbleheads because my wife gets suckered into something?
It's in its own way. It's kind of worse.
How many do you need?
Here's what happened.
Okay.
So last week when you started this, it just came up.
I love how you said when you started this.
Well, I mean, we were giving away bobbleheads,
right?
And we were going to give away 1 a day on the air, and then we were joking around because you gave away 3.
I did.
And Ray was going to have to deal with them.
Yep.
So Stay says to me. Last week we were on a little trip, with Nikki, as you know. Mm-hmm. She says to me, a lot of people are tweeting me asking if I can give away some bobbleheads. Can we give away bobbleheads? And I said, no, we can't. Then she was away for a couple of days at the beginning of this week. She turns the TV on yesterday, and she hears you saying that Chris is giving away this one and this one and this one. I come home yesterday, and she's looking at me like, I thought you said I couldn't give away any bobbleheads to all these people who are asking for them. So now I have a list. I have a list of bobbleheads I have to bring home today. Thank you very much.
Why would you listen? Don't look at me.
I said no. I didn't think we could just give away bobbleheads.
Why would you tell her no?
Well, because last week we weren't doing that. We were giving them away only on the air.
You heard the last couple of days. The
last few days I didn't think of it.
How many bobbleheads after the show? If I had you sign that I then put in my bag to take home so my wife can mail, we're going to spend more postage than ESPN.
I can't count to a number that high.
I know.
So now I'm getting yelled at in my house.
Well, listen, that's your own fault for saying no.
I didn't think we had the purview.
We have all these bobbleheads up here. Walk around that wall in a break.
There's a lot of them in there.
There's a lot of them. So, people just can't get specific about what they want. You can ask for anything you want, but you get what you get if we choose to send you one. And I know it's gotten out of control. It has gotten out of control, and you know what? It's not my fault.
Here's the only thing I will say. At least it's fun.
It is.
Because it has gotten to a point now where getting up in the morning and opening I almost open my phone like the way I watch a horror movie, with one eye, like what could possibly have happened now? And every single day the news is just unrelentingly bleak.
Yep.
It's in this little world of ours that has always been the escape from that.
Right.
And I get it, and you have to go where the news takes you, so you have to go with the things that are going on. But just one day after another, it's just it's constantly being pounded over the head with all of this heavy and bad and depressing news. And obviously the NCAA stuff yesterday was a big deal. We'll get to that here, but let's start off the top. And let's start with some good news, at least for everybody in Chicago. The Cubbies are back in the playoffs for the 3rd straight year. They clinch the Central Division.
First time the Cubs have won back-to-back division titles since 07-08, and third time franchise history they clinched a playoff spot on a day where they were playing St. Louis. It was September 27th in 1935, October 1st, 1938. Reigning world champs that win the division then in the wild card era, which began in 1995. They don't really go on and win a whole lot. You know, the Yankees in 2000, 99, and then 2000. So we'll see where it goes with the Cubs. They were obviously the story in all of baseball last year. They were favorites coming into the postseason, where this year in their own league, it's going to be the Indians who are the favorites and maybe the Dodgers over. I know it's between Cleveland and the Dodgers, so they come in not as highly sought after and looked at going into the postseason. But, you know, you're in. That's all that matters. Just hit it right now. You could be the champ.
Yeah, last year was the year of the Cubs. Let's see whose year this is. It certainly could be
Off the top,
theirs again, or it could belong to the Twins. Despite losing yesterday, Mike, the Twins do something that had never been done before in baseball history.
First team in Major League Baseball history to make the playoffs a year after losing 100 games. There had been three teams, actually two teams. The Diamondbacks did it twice, and the Braves did it also between 2010 and then going back to 1990. The most games they lost was 97, and then would get in the playoffs the next year. The Twins lost 103 games last year, and this year they made the playoffs. So good for them. They'll play either the Red Sox or the Yankees, probably the Yankees, starting next Tuesday. They do have a 12 straight postseason game losing streak right now. It's the second longest losing streak ever. The Red Sox from 86 to 95 had a 13-game postseason game losing streak, so we'll see if the Twins can break theirs.
Off the top.
Meanwhile, football tonight, the oldest rivalry in the National Football history will be renewed as the Bears take on the Packers at Lambeau Field.
This is amazing. This will be the 100, and listen to these numbers. This will be the 195th meeting between the Bears and the Packers, including playoffs. The series record is 94, 94, and 6. The Packers, here's the point scoring. The Packers have scored 3,335 points. The Bears have scored 3,331 points.
Ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous.
It's like that Carolina Duke stat we would always have where their numbers were basically equivalent, but this is even more improbable.
The Bears beat the Packers on September 24th, 1933. That evened the series at 11-11-4. They won again a month later in October of 93, and then held the series lead up until last year when the Packers tied it. So, I mean, it's just
this
incredible.
This will be the first time, if the Packers win tonight, it'll be the first time since 33 that they're actually ahead.
In the series. And it bodes well for them because the Bears are 4-15 against Aaron Rodgers. Though the 4 wins are in primetime.
The Bears, okay, so there's that. The Bears dominated this through the 80s because the Bears were really good and the Packers were really bad. And then the Packers got Brett Favre, and from that point forward, basically between Favre and Rodgers, they've owned the Bears.
Yeah, they absolutely have. Yeah.
That's going to happen when you've got the great quarterbacks. I mean, think about it. Through that era, the Packers have had 3 first-ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and Starr and Favre, and now Aaron Rodgers.
And let me say this, during the time they've played against the Packers, Mike Glennon will be the 4th different Bears starting quarterback to start against the Packers in their last 4 games.
Yeah.
Matt Barkley, Brian Hoyer, Jay Cutler, Mike Glennon.
Well, there's your point. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
It's unreal.
So they've had 2 quarterbacks since 1992 or whatever it is, and the Bears have had 4 starting quarterbacks in their last 4 games. The President's Cup is underway in New Jersey. They're playing at Liberty National.
I mean, listen, I know you were into golf, and I'm so into, obviously, the majors and the Ryder Cup. You get much into this? I mean, the U.S. has dominated this. It's U.S. against an international team, and it's been dominated by the U.S.
Into it is a relative term. I will enjoy watching some of the shots that are hit. I won't sit glued to it the way I would with the Ryder Cup or something. I do like watching this style of golf because you don't get to see it on tour, where tour basically just play stroke play all the time.
I do like the way.
So when they play alternate shot,
I do enjoy that.
You'll see guys try.
Yep.
You will see some stuff that you'll say to yourself, "I can't believe that you can hit that shot." Stuff that they would never try in a stroke play event. So I enjoy watching that sometimes.
Yeah, they're looking for their first win in the international squad since 1998. They're debuting only 4 rookies. The U.S. 6. One of the captain's picks for the U.S., Phil Mickelson, who is the only person to play in all 12 of these.
Yeah, he's very proud of that.
Yeah.
I've seen some interviews where he's talked about that, and Tiger is there.
Tiger's one of the assistant
talking yesterday too.
Right.
So we'll hear that a little bit later, and then finally, we get to fallout from the FBI investigation into corruption in college basketball, which, as we projected yesterday, claimed one of the biggest names, I guess, in the history of college coaching. Rick Pitino, for all intents and purposes, fired yesterday at Louisville.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it happened a little bit after our show, but we thought it was going to happen. We were just wondering how it was going to happen. You know, the firing will happen technically. He was put on unpaid administrative leave, and Jurich, the AD, was put on paid administrative leave. And there's the key there. If you're ever going to go on administrative leave, try and be paid. You definitely, because you know you're grabbing your last couple of paychecks before you're going to be fired.
It's what everyone's talking about, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day. And the case of Pitino, it doesn't work that way, of course. The reason he's on unpaid administrative leave is because they have to give him 10 days notice before they can fire him. And we've already seen the first missive from his legal team saying Rick didn't do anything wrong. We want the $44 million still owed him on his contract, and that will be the big battle. Pitino will not come back and coach.
No, he will not.
Again.
It's just how much money he's going to get. Will he get all of it, some of it, none of it?
What do you make? What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's like one of those things they may work something out unless someone's going to really dig in their heels and say, you know, Pitino's side really says we want all of it, or Louisville's going to say, you know what, we have enough against you, we think, to say you get none of it. Unless somebody really digs their heels in on that, I'd imagine they'll figure out a number if they're both willing to work that way, because I think they both have the realization that he's not coming back. And, you know, Pitino can scream to the mountaintops as he's going away with either all his money, some of his money, or none of his money that, you know, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything in the Katrina Powell case with the prostitutes and the strippers, and I didn't know anything in this case, and that's my story, and I'm sticking with it, even though I don't have a job anymore. So that's where we all knew this was going to be the outcome. A lot of it is just going to be now we fill in the spaces as to how it's all going to go. Is it going to be a horrible ending? Is it going to be an amicable ending, which it doesn't seem like it's heading in that direction? Will it be amicable down the road? What's going to happen to Louisville, who already is appealing their vacated wins from 2010 to 2014, which, oh, by the way, includes the 2013 National Championship. They're appealing that to try and get those back. This from the case that was just handed down in June from the prostitutes and the strippers coming on campus. They had two big-time recruits in this class. They've lost them both. Both of them are already decommitted. That's not shocking at all. So that's what we see now. Rick Pitino, his legacy will be marred. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of where it comes up in his paragraph. But then as you look forward to actual, you know, student athletes, if we're still using that term, going to play at Louisville, what does it do for that school? What does it do for that basketball program going forward?
Look, they have enough history, tradition, and significance that I believe eventually they will resurface. They will get a new coach. Like I heard people yesterday speculating, and I mean the speculation goes across the spectrum from some coach they might go and try and pluck from another school even right now because the team they have is so good. They were a national championship leading contender this year, to go out and find someone who is not currently coaching and ask them to come and hold the job down for a year, like Thad Matta is not coaching. There are a couple of other names. Oh, my goodness, I can't believe I'm forgetting this. A couple of other high-profile names of guys who are sitting it out right now.
To hold the job now.
And just sort of hold the job down for the year because they have a really, really good team. Forget the decommits and all that kind of stuff. They got a bunch of kids there that are ready to play that could win a national championship if you bring in a coach who's able to coach them. I can't believe I'm forgetting who some of the names I saw speculated about where there were some that made a lot of sense. For the purposes of this discussion, it doesn't matter. There are two really big questions to me here. Pitino, to me, is a larger-than-life figure.
Right.
Pitino, going back to certainly his days at Providence, he was an assistant coach on the Knicks under Hubie, and then he was the coach of Providence and took them to a Final Four with Billy Donovan, and then he went and became the head coach of the Knicks and was way ahead of his time.
Right.
I mean, all this, if you look at what everyone is doing now in the NBA with hurrying up possessions, taking more shots, and taking more threes, Rick Pitino's teams were doing that in the 80s with the Knicks, and in a personality conflict with Al Bianchi, he was out. He goes to Kentucky, wins a championship and builds by far the best program in the country there. Leaves that to go to the Celtics. That goes terribly.
Terribly. That's when the famous line of Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish aren't walking through that door.
Through that door.
Yeah.
In his Long Island accent. And then to Louisville, where he builds, this another championship program, becomes the first coach ever to win titles at two different schools. So to me, the preeminent college basketball coach of this era is Mike Krzyzewski. There's no question of that. He's at the top of the mountain. But if you go after that, if you say to me, I need one guy to coach me one game, I would, in my own mind, I'd be fighting between Rick Pitino and Tom Izzo to have them coach that game. I don't know which one I would pick.
Yeah.
But just to coach one game.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
This guy could just flat out coach basketball. And unfortunately, that's not how he's going to be remembered. I mean, unfortunately is a relative term. If all this is true, then of course he did it to himself. But to answer your question, where does it go in the paragraph? I think it goes early.
Yeah, I do as well, because the things that have put him in the spotlight outside of his basketball teams have been big, have been major situations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And very high profile.
Very, very high profile.
A lot of people get busted by the NCAA, not so many by the FBI.
No, it's exactly right. And then the whole personal side of it with the extramarital affair and the restaurant and what went on from there with somebody who was the equipment manager's wife. I mean, it was not good. As far as on the court, fifth among active coaches, 770 wins. Coach K obviously leading there. Boeheim, Huggins, Williams, Bird are the other ones. And to fill in a more current to fill the role for a year, Jim Grobe. Remember, he did that at Baylor.
At Baylor.
From Wake Forest.
That exact idea is what I'm talking about.
Filled in for that year. Now Matt Rule took over Baylor. That's what we're probably looking at here is somebody.
As opposed to promoting from within? I mean, the problem with promoting from within.
I guess that. I guess even that, it's going to be a year guy, even if you promote from within, unless they just want to wipe everybody out, quite honestly, because you had one.
Herman just walked in.
There's Herm Edwards, who'll be on with us in 15 minutes, just yelling, get them all out, because look at what's going on. You had an assistant with the whole stripper prostitution thing. You have another assistant in Vegas who's on tape talking about let's keep it low. So do you want to raise an assistant coach where already two you've had issues with, or do you just want to wipe them all out, which, good and bad, and we can talk to Herm about this. Now you're building a smaller staff in basketball as opposed to football, but to be able to do that when you believe you have a really good team, because at some point, shockingly enough, do you want to actually think about the players on the court, and what would be best for them? We know they didn't do that. What was it last year when they had the good team and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll take our postseason penalty now."
2 years ago.
2 years ago,
championship caliber team. Absolutely.
All the players are going, wait a minute, wait, why are we getting thrown into this mess?
Last year they lost in the second round of the tournament to Michigan.
Ago,
I had them in the national championship game. A lot of good that did me, and it turns out it will have been Pitino's last game. Tom Crean was the name that I was trying to come up with before.
Okay.
He's a guy who's not coaching right now.
Right.
He's obviously a huge, high-profile coach who has had enormous success, took Marquette to a Final Four all those years at Indiana. Mata is the one that I mentioned, but Crean, so would you consider that? That wouldn't be elevating an assistant. That's a high-profile, major coach. You bring him in for a year, and you say, JT3 is the other one. Thank you. Those were the three names that I heard yesterday. Mata, JT3, and Crean.
Here's the difference, and I would lean toward college basketball coaches and or former coaches or players to describe this. You're not too far off from starting your season. A new head coach, what does he bring in? I don't know that the nuances of changing up how you run your offense or your defense this close to a season, how well players that are used to one way can acclimate that quickly. I could sit here and try and guess at it, being a former athlete and trying to learn things, but I would rather hear from somebody who's been, in college basketball to know how close you are and how difficult or maybe not as difficult it would be to kind of shape shift to what you need if you bring in somebody like that.
We'll wait and see what they decide to do. That's the biggest piece of this to me. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. That's first and foremost, of course. A Hall of Fame coach has lost his job and probably the end of his career. The next piece of this is, where does the next shoe drop?
Right.
Where does this go?
A lot of nervous
from
people
here?
Out there.
We've already seen what happened with one assistant at Alabama, who amazingly, his previous job had been within the NCAA's arm of investigation. And this guy now is at Alabama, and now he's out because obviously they had a conversation. If you weren't with us late in the show yesterday, Seth Greenberg said basically every college coach in America, he is assuming, had a meeting yesterday where he called in everybody, literally everybody, and said, okay, what do I need to know?
Yep.
What's been going on here that we need to know right now? Because the feds came out and said it. This will come out much better if you come to us than if we show up at your door.
They said we have the playbook, so you want to give us a call, so we're not calling you.
So what would you imagine? Would you imagine there will be other high-profile, for lack of a better word, heads that roll?
I guess a lot of it will come down to, because it's going to be assistant coaches involved in this. It's just a matter of what the schools do. Rick Pitino is getting fired, not just for this specific thing right here. Would we agree on that?
Yes.
I mean, with what just happened.
This happened while they were under investigation for something.
Yeah, and just got disciplined for that, when this was recorded a month and a half before that, when the assistant coach got recorded. So I don't know if other schools where their head coaches haven't had issues, if that head coach, the assistant certainly, but will the head coach go as well, even with the rule of, hey, you can't just claim you don't know, you're on the hook for this? So I don't know. I think a lot depends on the track record of the coaches that would be involved, the head coaches.
You got Sean Miller at Arizona, you got Andy Enfield at USC, and then I would imagine you have a lot of other coaches around the country who are asking these kinds of questions of their assistants and whatever else, and we'll see where the FBI winds up next. Where Mike and Mike were presented by Progressive Insurance. Herm Edwards, the aforementioned, is on the way. We'll hear from him coming up shortly. Shell Pennzoil Performance Line for all our guests, and we got tons of them today. Pat Forty on the Louisville situation, Mike Tirico today, Shefty today, Ryan Smith, and a whole lot more. And as I was thinking how we would bring Herman in, I thought of these words. When I find myself in times of trouble, Herm Edwards comes to me speaking words of wisdom. He will do that next and try and make some sense of all that we are seeing in this world of sports.
Hey, let it be.
Well done.
Just let it be.
Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling that you're safe to enjoy the things that matter most. ADT lets you take that feeling with you. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, we help keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling for less than $1 a day. ADT. Home, safe home.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You play to win the game.
All right, Herm Edwards is here. As I said before, when I find myself in times of trouble, Herman comes to me speaking words of wisdom. Good morning, Herman Edwards.
Good morning.
Over the course of time, Herm, from the time you came here, so for those who don't know Herman's history, great player for a really long time assistant coach, and then head coach with the Jets and the Chiefs. Then you've been here at ESPN for a long time. For a while there, it felt like your name came up for college coaching jobs, and a lot of us looked at you and said, with your overwhelming leadership skills and integrity, you would be a great college coach. So I wanted to put that out there because to sort of frame this conversation. When you see this kind of stuff going on with what we're seeing in the NCAA now and the way it's impacting college basketball, and don't be surprised if this winds up making its way over to football at some point pretty soon. I just wonder, with that thought in mind, what thoughts go through your mind as you watch it?
Well, I can reflect on when I was a college athlete, obviously, and then actually a college coach. Had to go into homes and recruit. I was actually a college coach before I became a pro coach. I was at San Jose State for 3 years. People don't realize that. When I retired, I was an assistant coach for Claude Gilbert at San Jose State. And I coached for 3 seasons there. I had to go in homes and recruit players. And we were a JC school. We recruited a lot of junior college guys or double transfers, guys that would leave other universities, would come to San Jose State. It was a little bit of a renegade school, similar to San Diego State when I left Cal, kind of a renegade school. And so I understand the process of all this. I've been in those homes and recruited kids. And, there's such a push to win, and there's so much pressure on these coaches. And as we talked about Coach here, all of a sudden, his name's in the news. And look, the rules have always been fudged, okay? I mean, even when I went to school, look, I went to University of California, Berkeley. We were on probation for 5 years. It wasn't for giving kids books, okay? Let's just make that perfectly clear. And, when you become a part of this system, you have to realize this. When you're the head guy, what are your values? And are you willing to compromise those to win? That's where you draw the line. And you got to ask yourself, well, look, I need good players, okay, to be successful. But am I willing to compromise my values? I would never do that. And I understand you're supposed to win, but I'm not doing that because you got to live with yourself. And I've always felt when you're a coach, your responsibility is you're a builder of men too, not just winning games, but you're actually a builder of men, especially when you're in college. Because you get these kids, they're 18 years old, they're looking for somebody. You know, they're looking for some direction. And I think when these young people are being used to aim money or favor, they grow up in a system where they think it's okay. And it's okay. And all of a sudden, if you as a high school player, you think, well, it's okay. This is how it works. No, it's not how it works. And I think you got to get in front of it. And I understand, look, this is big business now. I get that part. But it's still about building young men. Because once they leave the athletic field, they become fathers. They become parents. They become citizens in the community. That's part of your task as well as a coach. That's what I always believe. That's what I learned from the coaches that I was under as a player and as an assistant coach. I learned that from these men. I learned that from Dick Vermeil in pro football, okay? I learned that from my high school coach. I learned that from college coaches. And that was always in my mind. I said, you know, it's bigger than just winning a game, all right? Because your legacy is a part of these athletes that you touch every day.
So how much of that nowadays, because everybody believes you, and you've not only talked it, you've walked that with some of the things you've done while you were coaching. How much, though, of what you say is in the minority now? I'm not going to say because the pressure of winning is big. The pressure of winning has always been big. Yeah. But the money now.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
You got coaches ranging from $9 million to coordinators making over $1 million.
Yes.
So now is it as much about how can I mold that young man, or how can I put myself in a position to be one of those guys with the big paycheck?
Well, it all starts from leadership. What is the leadership? How does he build his program? And is he willing to compromise? And if he's willing to compromise, I always say, when you're the coach, the responsibility of the program is yours. And how you run your program filters down to your assistant coaches and the athletes you have there. Because eventually, when the line moves of where the line is supposed to be and you start fudging the line, it keeps moving. And before you know it, the line is so far removed, there's no line anymore. There's kind of like this gray area. And all of a sudden, you're like, well, I didn't know. When a head coach says, I didn't know, I'm like, no. That's your job to know. Your name's on this program. The assistant coaches, they come and go. Your name is on the program. That becomes your legacy. And you got to know. And when a coach crosses the line, you got to say, no, we don't do that here. That's just my opinion.
So I want to ask one on the players at Louisville this year.
Yes.
Are they going to get forgotten? Because when you walked in before, you said get rid of them all. And I get it. Yeah. I get it. But you know what? There's a group of players on that court that will be in there last year.
Sure.
There's a group of students who will be going to watch Louisville basketball for the last year before they move on. How do you salvage for those players and those students this year?
See, look, for those players and those students, they were in a situation where there was no line. The line had been crossed, and it's like normal for them. This is what happens. Look, when I was in elementary school, there was 3 shoe companies coming after me. and they were paying my mom or whoever some money for me to wear the shoe. That's normal to them. They don't know any better. It's not like I shouldn't say they don't know any better, but if you
don't know any different. They don't know a world in which that isn't their reality.
Yeah, it's like it's okay because the guys before me did it too, so that's okay now. And so it becomes normal. It just becomes, that's fine, it's normal.
Because if you're a kid, an adult tells you this is just how it works. Yeah. I know that's what the rules say, but this is how it works.
Yeah.
Right,
we do this all the time. Yes. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen.
It's okay.
And
there's no consequences. There's no consequences.
And you believe it. And so you can say you shouldn't. And I get that part of it, but it's not as easy to do. Mike, let me ask you one straight talk question. I want to get to some football with Herman here as well. But Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. What we may be about to see, I don't know this, but what we may be about to see is a total onslaught. If you listen to Dickie V yesterday with what sounded like tears in his voice, talking about this on SportsCenter. I think he anticipates, and I think a lot of people anticipate, that this is just the tip of the iceberg, that we're going to see just all kinds of big names and all kinds of stuff about to happen in big-time college athletics. You look at the rules. You look at the amateurism model, something that was basically developed 100 years ago at a time when there was almost no money in this, that was designed to try and create an even playing field, that is now trying to maintain that, not in an evil way, just this is what they think they're supposed to do in a climate where there are now billions of dollars at stake. Would you agree with me that it is time to rethink the way we do it, to get a bunch of smart people in a room, as your son sort of said the other day? I'm not sitting here telling you I know how to do it, but to get a bunch of people in a room and say, you know what? The time for amateurism as we know it has come and gone. There's too much money involved here, and if you don't start giving it to the people who are earning it, it's gonna find its way somewhere to these sleazy guys who are doing all this stuff nefariously. Would you agree that it is time to rethink the system as it is currently shaped?
I always have no problem sitting down to rethink something that seems antiquated for so many years. But on one part of this, one part is, people have talked about, is paying players. Would that put a dent in a player accepting $100,000 to go to an Adidas school and then go play, wear that shoe when he goes to the pros? Maybe. I don't know how much money you can give the kid. But what you're talking about, is that going to stop what the assistant coaches have done? Are we going to change the system so now the assistant coaches are making enough money to where they think they don't want to put another $50,000 in their pocket?
But what you could do is you could allow the athletes to have agents, reputable, legitimate agents, while they're playing in college, so they aren't being steered to these agents who are willing to break the rules.
The key thing you just said there is reputable, good agents, because there are some of those and there are some that are not. So
that's always the case.
That's the problem you run into. You want to sit down and have a discussion and start to change things. There are some things that do need to be changed. I agree with that. But we all know what happens when you change things. The new loopholes are found and the new ways around it are found. It's not going to change. It's like with steroids. I took a certain kind when I was playing. It gets better. You find a way to hide it from the doctor. You can go ahead and say, well, now we got a rule for that. We're going to test for that. Well, then they got a better one that you can't test for. Well, we can test for that now. Well, then they'll find another one.
But that doesn't mean that you stop
trying.
trying.
I understand that. I'm just saying there's no end-all, be-all answer for this. Do they need to, as it's been said, make the rule book thinner? Yes, because there's some ridiculous things there. You and I just differ in maybe just how thin it needs to become.
We spent a little bit of the time here talking about this business with the NCAA and the FBI and the rest of it. As I mentioned off the top of the show this morning, I mean, every day there's just all of this news around our little world of sports, and none of it is particularly fun. I do want to get your thoughts, Herman, on everything that we've seen surrounding the NFL and the national anthem and all of that. And again, for those who don't know, Herm Edwards was raised on a military base, right?
Yeah.
Your father
27 years
fought in World War II and in
Korea
Korea.
War, yeah.
So no one, and you were raised there, and you have lived your life by a
code of conduct, yes,
that is very similar to that of a military person, even though you were not in the military yourself.
Right, exactly.
I wanted to put that out there for those in the audience who don't know it, because I think it does inform the conversation. So with that as the backdrop, I'll give you the floor.
Well, obviously, there's been a lot of things said about the protests that the players are making, and I think the way the protests went about, the message got diluted early. When you think about the national anthem and how it really creates emotion and stirs emotion in every individual, and every individual looks at it differently. And I think the message from that point, when Colin took the knee or decided not to stand for the national anthem, what he was really trying to bring light to got diluted. And really, it went in a lot of different directions. It has been twisted and turned and everything else. And I will say this about the national anthem. I learned about the national anthem at a young age, at a very young age. I lived on an Army base. And at 8 o'clock, the flag would come up. And if you were a soldier on the Army base and you were dressed in uniform, regardless of where you were on that Army base, you got out of your car and you faced northeast, and you put your hand over your heart and you saluted the flag. And at 5 o'clock, the flag came down, and if you were in your car on the Army base, or if you were a soldier on that Army base, you stopped to what you were doing and you looked somewhere toward northeast, and you knew the flag was over there, and you saluted the flag. Well, that's my memory of learning how to understand and pay tribute to the flag. Now, with that being said, my father told me this. He said, son, I went to the Army so you would have the privilege to have rights in this country. Some of the things I didn't have the privilege of having growing up in the South, okay? And he said, with that, he says, whether you stand for the flag or kneel for the flag or don't even pay attention to the flag, you have a right to do that as an American. That's your right. I fought in 2 wars for your rights to make it better for you and for the next generation of people. And he said, that's the decision you have to make. With that being said, I always stand for the flag to honor my father. Okay, that's my point of view. Now, I think with this situation that has transpired now in the National Football League, we all view it from different avenues. There's no wrong answer, by the way. There's a lot of argument on both sides, but there's no wrong answer. But what are we talking about? We're talking about social injustice. I hear a lot of people talking about these million-dollar athletes. Why are they doing that? Well, before they were million-dollar athletes, they grew up in neighborhoods like myself, and there was social injustice. They are the voice of the voiceless. They're speaking for those people. Just because you have $1 million, that doesn't mean, it means you're okay, but no, yeah, I'm okay, but I'm going to speak for the people that don't have a voice. Why would you do it for the national anthem? I'll go back to 1968. I had the privilege of talking to Tommy Smith and John Carlos when they did this. Mm-hmm. And the question I asked them, I said, well, why did you do that? And they told me, and he said, you know what? Because we knew if we did that, that made an impact. People went, whoa, why would they do that? So when you take a knee, it makes an impact. But the message gets drowned out because now the message is on the flag. And it had nothing to do with the flag or disrespecting the military or disrespecting anybody. It has something to do with we have an issue here in our country that no one's talking about. And the people that are dealing with it don't have a voice. We're going to be their voice. Now, here's the problem. It's in sports. It's amazing. When people walk into the stadium, think about this, not just the players. Players come from all different walks of life. So do the fan bases. The fan bases walk in the stadium. They don't care what neighborhood you're in. Hey, I'm voting for the Chargers. I'm a Charger fan. I'm a Jet fan. And they come into the stadium with that mindset. Why can't we come to the stadium and talk? To solve some of these problems. They're all fans of the Jets or the Chargers or the Chiefs or whoever they are, and they come from all different walks of life. And they get along as fans. And then we go back to our communities and all of a sudden we just kind of disappear and say, oh, that's not my problem. Really? It's our problem. It's America's problem. And we got to find a way to solve it.
Yeah, that's what's next. I watched the CNN roundtable. We can get more into it last night. Hines Ward, Nate Boyer, who was tried out as a long snapper, was the Ranger, and Spike Lee was there. I thought one of they brought in Michael Bennett and Doug Baldwin. I thought Doug Baldwin was fantastic because the next question was, and obviously we're running out of time here, is where do you go next? Yeah. You know, what's next for all of this?
Herman, you're the best. Thanks you.
Thanks, you guys are the best. Thank you.
Delightful to see you. Herman's on his way to Sports Center. Pat Forty and more as we continue here on a busy Thursday. Mike and Mike. We'll be right back.